Hello, everyone. This is the Editor Product Design weekly meeting for January 27th, 2021. And I will basically turn my time over to you all because I just put a couple quick agenda items and none of them are really worth verbalizing all that much. I'll be putting a schedule, putting a meeting on the schedule for kicking off the WYSIWYG rich text editor for breaking down iterations, and look forward to starting that work, but it is yet to be scheduled. So not much more to talk about there. And I'm interested in the other items on the agenda. So please take it away.
All right. So within the design world, um, last week was last week and this week was actually dealing with other teams' scenarios with settings and navigation. So first up in navigation is um, the one team looking at putting import and create links into the drop down menu and how that may pan out in our new world. So the current direction that I had chatting with them is that they should go ahead and put in the links that they want to do because they're solving a problem for their users, which is not really a navigation problem, but it's like they want to put the links in there so it's exposed, so that that's what their research shows that people are naturally looking in those areas. Cool. Let them run with that. And that when we cross our bridge of consolidating, then looking at how potentially that would look with their thoughts in mind. So yesterday I did some iteration on that, which is actually kind of doing some of the work on breaking down the top nav work as well. So this helps with creating that epic. So I'm looking to get that out later today or early tomorrow. So for your feedback, Eric, and then yeah, so I expect that later, like for your Friday. So and the other thing I was looking at was um, and the one group looking at the allow force push setting. So this is more like an intricate level of detail for settings. Some developers have fed back on the issue, so I'm going to look into that to see where the edge cases are, which is also useful for us because if we push down on certain patterns and stuff, it's good to see if it holds up in real life scenarios and things that are more complicated to set up. So I think these were two really good things to stress test some of the thinking that we've had internally within our group. We haven't done a lot of externalizing that, but yeah, that's coming up soon because I'm just going to jump into UX research. Was uh, last week I like quickly put together a moderated session around saving and updating within settings, and kind of the other thing was the use of toggles, whether we should keep them or remove them. And yeah, there's some good signals from that solution validation that I think helps solidify my thinking around um, the add and update. More particularly, Eric, around if you click add, then we would show it inline as a first step, and then the future step could be like a modal or whatever else. I think that is the right direction to go. As in, the ideal state should be a modal or some kind of thing that pops out. But in the interim, if we use the inline view, that's sufficient. Like it's usable. It's not like super awesome compared to the other stuff, but it is a valid it's a valid solution, especially given the amount of places we have to implement it. It's not a bad direction in the spirit of MVC. Any questions about that or comments?
I was just going to say thanks for jumping into that import and create call to action. When I saw that group basically activate on the issue, I wanted to just make sure we were aligned, that they knew we were about to start messing with those menus, and I didn't want them to have to do anything. My fear was we would hit the same milestone, right? They would be like working in that area of the code base, try and merge something and realize we messed up the whole top nav for them. I looked at your proposal. It looks great. I agree with it, and I'm looking forward to breaking those down and hopefully starting work on that in 13.10. But yeah, I think that's going to be a really good change. So glad you were able to work in their needs into that pattern that you've already tested. And yeah, everything else sounds great. I'm excited to see the unmoderated user testing giving some good actionable or like good feedback that we can either use to validate or adjust our proposals.
Cool. And quickly on the UX research side, there was a homepage redesign survey, which was essentially a banner ad on the homepage that was run twice for 30-minute durations last year. We got like 36 results, and I just spent a little bit of time to put together the findings from it and any insights from it itself. So that's in the issue there. Um, yeah, I think there's some stuff that have come up in the past, like starring things and remembering stuff like that. So nothing came out as like a huge surprise for us, but it's more signals that like, yeah, it's still coming up in different ways, like in different, like now this is a survey and the same kind of points are coming up. So I created a separate issue to like come up with different ideas or solutions to move that forward. But for the time being, yeah, the survey is analyzed.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you for creating that separate issue. That makes it really easy to follow. Thank you.
yeah, because I didn't want to conflate recommendations within the same like analysis thing, because yeah, it's probably because it's not like a solution validation per se, so you can't say like yes, we're going forward with this. So that's why I broke it off into that separate issue. Um, yeah, and upcoming solution validation is I'm actually going to thinking about using a non-moderated session to look at like merge request settings. So this is the idea of like if you're looking at a merge request and you want to change some settings about it, how would you do that? So at the moment, people will have to click on the settings at the bottom, but somewhere on the page, I'll throw a link on to settings, and then it'll be both looking at changing something or taking a look at read-only views. But that's the rationale here is to start getting signals on, where should we place settings? Should it be within the left menu on all product areas? How is the navigation between that link to settings, or should it be like in a drawer or something like that? So that's in my head. That's what I'm kind of trying to start to get feedback on. Secondary stuff that I'm looking at is setting search and web IDE kind of stuff, but those are probably looking like maybe 2 weeks out.
Yeah, so did you say with that one, so you said it would start at the bottom, but you would place the link just somewhere on the page? Like, do you mean just in case they don't think to click at the bottom or?
No, so this is like you're within the merge request area of the product.
Oh,
Uh,
gotcha.
and so from there, if you wanted to look at your approval rules or add an approver to the list, how would you get to it? And
Okay.
that's kind of that's the scenario that I'm looking for. So it'll be I'll tap Pedro to get some feedback on valid scenarios, or maybe you can help too because you've been working on some of this source code, no, the code review stuff. So, and you might be able to help with some scenarios that used that in the past, and then I was just like mimic that using the new interactions, kind of like what we did with the benchmarking stuff. So it could be useful to just reuse the same scenarios.
Do you think maybe some things from the category maturity scorecard could work? I remember there were some settings related to code owners, and then their approval ones as well. So we can talk about that more. Okay.
That would be perfect actually, because it's almost like a like for like kind of test.
Yeah. Oh, is it on to me now? Okay, I think it is. So update that. Actually, this is a good segue. So I launched a project level settings tree test in the workshop. So similar to the things that I did for the project and group level left sidebars. So the goal of that is to also investigate this question of where users expect to manage settings. And here, since it's just going to be the tree structure, we'll get more around their first click expectation and then kind of where they land and the path they go down from there. I thought it might be helpful to start with this so that, because it's considering the entire flow of things, they could go down a lot of different paths and get lost if I did an unmoderated study. So I'm thinking that it makes sense to limit it for the general one and then do the unmoderated ones for the more specific scenarios, like the merge request, that you could kind of form them a bit better. But if you want to take a look at some of the results that are coming in, you can use that link. It's still actively collecting, but just in case you're curious. It's been interesting so far looking at some of the tasks. Like, I think we're going to get some interesting things around what people expect in settings general versus some of the places within settings, in addition to the question of settings versus the feature sections, because some of them, there's a lot of competition within settings. You know, is it in general? Is it in repository? Is it in access tokens? Things like that. So it's been interesting so far, but I do think it'll give us some information that will be useful. But yeah, so that is in progress. I'll give you an update on that when it is complete. And yeah, other than that, I'm currently working on SUS and another navigation related survey. There's so much happening right now. But so I'm delayed on my overall navigation analysis, but I'll resume that next week. And there will probably be more to consider with the data we get from SUS as well. So should be interesting.
Yeah, these results are really interesting. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I need to parse them, but yeah,
They are
great.
right.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think this one is, for me, this one's even more interesting to see where they think to go. Because you have some cases where it was difficult to avoid saying the actual word, you know, like mirroring repository. But in that case, when there was one that might prime them, I tried to balance it by saying like set. So set, where would you go to set a repository? Set a repository mirror. It's like you have both. Set reminds you of settings and repository makes you think of repository. So that was kind of a balancing act, but it's interesting to see where they end up despite these things. One that's pretty interesting is the task of where would you update the description for your project. So far, the majority is clicking on project details, but that is done in settings general. So that's another one that might be a little more clear cut than some of the others, but we'll see.
So this is unmoderated, correct? So you didn't watch them do this?
Yeah, this one is unmoderated.
If this would have captured, did anybody try and go to search for any of those terms?
to search. So it wouldn't capture whether they're searching for anything. So what I'm thinking of doing is looking at the results from this study just to see how the tasks were, and then either running an unmoderated version of this where they do this same study just while recording themselves, or using this set of tasks and having them do it in GitLab. I haven't decided which path yet, but just so we can get more context to the thought process as they're doing this. That might be a follow-up that I do.
Cool. Yeah, I was just looking at this paths thing and I was just wondering how many of them even thought to just search for the term, which wouldn't have worked in a lot of these cases, I think, but would have been curious and potentially changed if like a lot of them did that, it would have maybe changed how we prioritize the global search versus just like fixing the IA of the left nav.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you know, this is great, and it's also just a great baseline. So when we do make changes for either individual tasks or groups of these or every task, we can just test again and see if the changes were beneficial.
Yeah, and there's also some questions, like a question, like an open text question included at the end, where some of them will provide some feedback. So I'll take a look at that as well to see if they had any thoughts on that. So far, I think like 2 people have already mentioned wanting to search for settings, and other people kind of being like, they're all in the settings menu, but I want shortcuts or something on the page to the corresponding setting. So
yeah, that's
I think
what Michael's talking about.
Yeah, I think it brings up more considerations. Like, it's not just, do we need merge request configuration or merge request settings? It's also like on the merge request page and other parts of a flow, where could these settings live? Not just like distributing them throughout the sidebar only, that kind of thing.
Yep, and that is exactly the solution validation that I want to do. But you brought up a good point about whether search is a potential option, or like would people go there immediately? So what I plan to do for that in the unmoderated one is that if they click on search, then a pop-up appears that says like, hey, looks like you wanted to search. Please verbalize what you wanted to search up for. Surprisingly, with the unmoderated testing, people actually speak out as they talk, think a lot more than actually the one-on-one stuff. So maybe they're trained like user testing users that like, this is how you get paid or like the credit for your work. But I'm really impressed with the amount of work that people actually do. Like they actually, spell out everything. They read out the questions out loud. I'm like, well, this is much better than when I was doing the test one. So, I think if you structure an unmoderated one, it could be as good as like a face-to-face one. But yeah, you can't dive deeper, so you almost have to like anticipate some stuff. For the test I did for the adding and updating one, I secretly did the first one, which was just adding something to be inline, and then my follow-up question was like, what would you do to improve it? And one person said, oh, I wish this could be like a pop-up or something so that like I maintain focus. I'm like, yes, because the next one was like a pop-up and they were like, yes, this is exactly what it was. So I was like, yes, you fell into my trap.
Yes, I think I saw that video. But he's like, this is exactly it. But
Nice.
yeah, I definitely got a couple of comments so far where it was like, I like it when settings are configured inside the repository, such as GitLab YAML or the issue template folders, and it's like very specific. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you for that piece of information. And then another one was like, I would recommend a search input field to search across all settings like JetBrains products. I'm like, okay, give me more thoughts.
They're one step away from linking to an issue at that point, and they're practically talking about our roadmap. You should just ask them to submit a fix. It's a community contribution, right?
At this point.
Yeah. Well, Thank you, Michael, for thinking about that and your testing. I'd be interested to see if people click on the search, the global search at all, or any kind of search that you display.
Yeah, that's super
but this will
interesting.
be good to build on. Yeah, very good.
Yep, so that's
That
it.
sounds-
That's it for me for now. It's in progress. I will update you on how it goes.
Thank you. This is awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess just to wrap up, like I said, because we spend so much time talking about settings and navigation in these meetings. And we should. It's top of mind for you both. But we do have 6 other categories. So I feel like I should represent them a little bit in the conversation. So I will just touch on what I said again. Our hope is that we can start moving on the rich text editor with Wiki as the target category for our initial MVC starting next milestone. So I was talking with Roman about this, and I think we're gonna try and schedule like a weirdly structured kickoff meeting that's also like issue refinement and iteration planning with Enrique and whoever else wants to join next week to just dive into the technical details about like what we need to do starting next milestone. We don't need to go that much further out. And so, Michael, I know we've talked about like getting a mock-up for what it would look like. Honestly, I think Enrique's proof of concept using GitLab UI components that he's already put together, if you slap that in the wiki, that's pretty close to the MVC that we need. But obviously you need to have a chance to have input there. I don't believe that we're at any risk of like absolutely needing that for the next milestone though. There's a lot of foundational work, my impression is, that we'll need to do. So you're not going to be left out or fall behind in this scenario, but I'll keep you in the loop. And certainly if the meeting aligns with your awake times, it would be great to have you there. It'll probably be more like technical foundational issues that we are writing though. So, and then, yeah, you mentioned Web IDE stuff. We've been having several conversations recently about a couple considerations in the Web IDE that will probably play into maybe a little bit later this year, maybe second quarter this year, in planning some UX improvements that we could do there that I've looped you into some issues, Michael, but we can talk about them in more detail. The one that we were talking about over the past couple of days was really interesting, and that's the idea that the Web IDE could be used by people who don't have the ability to push commits, or maybe not want to push commits with their edits. And so what kind of paths can we give them instead of just turning off the Web IDE because it's not useful? How can we make it useful? And one of the ideas that actually already existed in our backlog but came back up and was new to me was the idea of just generating a patch file right from the Web IDE as either an alternate call to action from committing, or like if you can't commit, then you could either, like right now, if you can't commit, if it's a read-only repository, or if you don't have permissions to commit, you can fork the project, assuming the project allows forks. And then you can obviously edit your fork and create a merge request from the Web IDE. But assuming that's not a path you want to take or can take, it would be kind of cool to be able to edit like 3 or 4 files and create a patch file to include and send to an engineer. So I believe that's something we'd be looking into. We tentatively scheduled for 1311, I believe, for like a proof of concept, but it might be something where we should talk about the usability and UX around the combining of the review and commit tabs and what those different paths look like if the Web ID is in different states and things like that. So, when you're ready to take a breath from settings and nav work, I'm sure we could kick off some testing and design ideation around that.
Yep. All that is bundled with the direction that I had with the web ID testing things. Yeah, I think
Cool.
when I'm at preview is that editor review commit tab
Right.
stuff. But
And I think in general, like there's just like maybe some thought around like the state and the different paths that you take within the web IDE given different permissions, and different places where you want the code to end up. Another thing we talked about is like, what if you wanted to take your changes and create a multi-file snippet out of it, or take that patch file and create a snippet from the patch file and then save that. So like a little bit more integration with our other categories and potentially enabling different personas to contribute where they would maybe feel more, I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but like the friction to actually creating a merge request might be too high, and they might either reach a dead end because their role prevents them from creating that, or they may feel uncomfortable with it and just want to like share this in some other way. Another use case they brought up today was that like during code review, engineers in our organization and our team even, or our group, will sometimes create patch files as part of the review process and be like, hey, you know, like if you did it this way, it might be better, and I've already kind of made those changes, and if you want to just apply them, here's the patch file. So it's an interesting use case, obviously one we wouldn't want to just rush into, but I think if we got the MVC behind a feature flag, we could probably test it pretty easily to see if people would understand it, and then we can craft the UX around the effort that you already have in play, I think.
yeah, those are really interesting scenarios. I never thought about it like from that angle. So thanks for sharing. And yeah, it would be a nice side break, like another thing to look at. So yeah.
Not that you need more work, but if it gives you a chance to step away and think about something else, then I'm happy to chat about it anytime. So there is an issue for the patch. I'm going to start refining it a little bit, and I'll ping you on that. And I think it even got assigned to you during our issue refinement, so you might just see it in your notifications. So just back of your mind, not top priority, but something we're thinking about right now.
Okay, cool.
And we're over time, so I won't keep y'all. We did a lot of small talk before the meeting, but I don't have anything else. I just felt like I needed to represent Web ID a little more than I did before.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I guess I'll see you all next week, most likely, looking at the calendar. But have a great rest of your week and rest of your day. I'll see you on
You too.
Slack.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right.
You too.
Bye.